So this is our last shiur before Yom Kabbalas HaTorah, before Chag HaShavuos. So it is only natural that we'll speak about a relevant question, and a question the entire world deals with, every yeshiva, every shul, every little shtibel. Shavuos in the morning. If you are up all night and you daven v'sikon in the morning, do you need to say Birchas HaTorah or not? And this is a big controversy, and it depends on two seifim in Shulchan Aruch in Siman Mem Zayin. Siman Mem Zayin, Shulchan Aruch HaChaim, is the siman that deals with all the halachas of Birchas HaTorah. Sif Yud Aleph, Shinas Kva B'yoyim Al Mitosoi, Have a Hefsik. So the first opinion brought in the Shulchan Aruch is, if you take a nap in the middle of the day, an afternoon nap, and the Shulchan Aruch emphasizes Al Mitosoi, Shiva boy that puts down his head on the table, that will never be defined as a Shinas Kva. But if you go to sleep in bed, that is a hefsek. And when you get up, you need to say Birchas HaTorah. Well, I assume that many of us do this on a steady basis, and we don't say Birchas HaTorah. V'yesh oimrim, de lo have a hefsek, v'chein nahagu. So this sif is somewhat of an interesting sif, because I think I shared with you many times, there are certain fundamental rules how to learn Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah. And when the Shulchan Aruch brings two different opinions, which one is accepted halacha? So the Shulchan Aruch writes, Yesh oimrim kach, v'yesh oimrim kach. The halacha is always like the second opinion. However, if the first opinion is stama, and then the Shulchan Aruch writes, Yesh oimrim, the halacha is in accordance to opinion number one. So let's go over the sif again. Shinas kva b'yoyim al mitosei have a hefsek. Shulchan Aruch doesn't write, Yesh oimrim, the have a hefsek. Have a hefsek. V'yesh oimrim, the lo have a hefsek. If the Shulchan Aruch would stop right here, we would say, the halacha is hefsek, and you need to say Birchas HaTorah. However, the minig is in accordance to the second opinion, and that is why we don't say Birchas HaTorah. How do we explain this? If any minig goes against halacha, we should be mevatel that minig, because halacha always would override a minig, and we would say it's a minig tos. Here comes in the Yad Malachi, and this is a very important klal. And all these klolim psika, most of them come from the Yad Malachi. And the Yad Malachi makes an interesting comment. If we have rules, when is the halacha keshita rishona and when is the halacha keshita acharona, why does the Shulchan Aruch bring two opinions? If we say, Shinas kva b'yoyim, have a hefsek, v'yesh amrim de lo have a hefsek, and the halacha is that it is a hefsek, why does he bring the other opinion? So yeshiva boys, you learn Gemara, Rishonim, and Achronim, but anybody that started learning Shulchan Aruch and Beis Yosef, almost in every sif in Shulchan Aruch, if you learn the Beis Yosef, there are different opinions. But in the vast majority of sifim in Shulchan Aruch only brings the halacha psuka. He doesn't bring all the different opinions in Shulchan Aruch. So why is it that sometimes he does? So the Yad Malachi says, even when we have a rule, the halacha is keshita rishona or keshita achrona, but whenever the Shulchan Aruch brings two different opinions, there is significance and credence to the other opinion, even though ein ikar halacha kemoisoi. So I would define it, I wouldn't say ein halacha kemoisoi, but rather ein ikar halacha kemoisoi. And what would be the nafkamina? If the opinion that is not accepted lahalacha is a kula, we would say b'shas adchak yesh mokem lahakal. If the opinion that is not accepted is a chumrah, we would say, Ra'ui lahachmir. Kol ha'machmir tov v'yolav brocha. And that is why the Shulchan Aruch brings both opinions. But when one opinion is totally rejected from the halacha, Shulchan Aruch wouldn't bring it. And you would learn it in the Beis Yosef, not in the Shulchan Aruch. And that is why this if is not a pele. Yes, the first opinion that it is a hefsek is more acceptable a halacha. However, the minhag is according to the second opinion. And maybe it is because sufik brachas lahakal. And when there is any question of doubt, we abstain from saying a bracha. And that is why the minhag is, you sleep in the afternoon, you don't say a bracha. Seif Yud Beis. And these two seifim seem to be contradictory. Af imel lamad balayla, halayla hoylech achar hayom. She'ava, ve'eino tzorech lachze ve'lavorech, kol zman shelo yosham. In all halachas, yom hoylech achar halayla. And the Jewish day starts by Tzeis HaKerchovim, me'erev ad erev. And that is why Shabbos is from Friday night to Motzei Shabbos. It's not from Shabbos morning to Sunday morning. Yom Kippur is me'erev ad erev. Ayoim oilach achar halayla. This even Shulchan Aruch says, Birchas HaTorah is different. In Birchas HaTorah, halayla oilach achar hayom. And therefore, when a person wants to learn by night, he doesn't need to say Birchas HaTorah. Because the Birchas HaTorah that he said in the morning, patters him till tomorrow morning. And therefore, you don't need to say Birchas HaTorah until you go to sleep and you get up. So the Magen Avraham is medayik. And if I did not go to sleep all night, do I say a bracha in the morning? No. Because the Shulchan Aruch says, Im lamed balayla, halayla hoylech achar hayom she'avar, ve'eino tzorech lachze ve'lavorech kol zman shelo yashan. That means if I was up all night and I didn't sleep at all, I wouldn't say Birchas HaTorah in the morning. Why not? So we go back to Seif Yud Aleph. What is the question? What is the machlokes between the two different opinions if a person sleeps by day? That is the machlokes Rosh and Rabbeinu Tam. Does Birchas HaTorah depend on hefsek, or does it depend on each and every day? Rabbeinu Tam's opinion is Birchas HaTorah is like Birchas HaShachar. And every day in the morning we say 15 brachas, Birchas HaShachar. And the Mechayev is a new day. The Rosh maintains Birchas HaTorah is like Birchas HaMitzvah. And it all depends on hefsek. It has nothing to do with day. So Birchas HaShachar are the brachas we say every morning. Birchas HaMitzvah are the brachas that we say before performing a mitzvah. And as long as you have no hefsek, you don't say the bracha again. Because you said the bracha, and it patters the mitzvah as long as you don't have a hefsek. According to Rabbeinu Tam, if you sleep in the afternoon, there's no reason to say Birchas HaTorah again. Just like you don't say Birchas HaShachar again. Birchas HaShachar you say every morning. And the same goes for Birchas HaTorah according to Rabbeinu Tam. And that is the second opinion. Lo have a hefsek. The Rosh maintains Birchas HaTorah is like Birchas HaMitzvah. So a shoichet said a bracha in the morning on a shchita. As long as he's shechting one animal after the other, he doesn't say a bracha. If he goes to sleep in the afternoon, says a bracha again. You said a bracha on the tzitzis in the morning. You took off your tzitzis and you went to sleep for 2 hours. When you put your tzitzis back on, you say a bracha. Same goes for tefillin. You took off your tefillin, you went to work, you want to put on tefillin again in the afternoon, you say a bracha. So the Rosh maintains Birchas HaTorah is like Birchas HaMitzvah, like tzitzis, tefillin, shchita. So if you sleep in the afternoon, that's a hefsek, a shinas kva, you say a bracha. Rabbeinu Tam says every day in the morning. The second side of the same coin would be I was up all night. According to Rabbeinu Tam, you say a bracha. Because it has nothing, doesn't matter at all, has nothing to do, did you sleep or you didn't sleep. It's nothing about hefsek. This brocha, you say every day in the morning, like Birchas Shachar. According to the Rosh, that it depends on hefsek, because I was up all night and I wasn't mafsek at all, I don't say a brocha in the morning. And if the Shulchan Aruch and Sif Yud Aleph says that the minig is in accordance to Rabbeinu Tam, that Birchas HaTorah is every morning, and therefore if you sleep in the afternoon, you do not say Birchas HaTorah, then that should dictate, if I was up all night, I need to say a brocha in the morning, because it has nothing to do with hefsek. So why does the Shulchan Aruch and Sif Yud Beis say, if I was up all night and I didn't go to sleep, I don't say Birchas HaTorah. So Sif Yud Beis would go against the minhag of Sif Yud Aleph. And that is what the Magen Avraham struggles with. So the Beis Yosef, second source, brings the Machlokes Rosh and Rabbeinu Tam. The Magen Avraham, let's have a look at number 3. Kol zman shelo yoshen mashma le'im ne'er kol halayla ein tzorech levorech b'boker v'tzorech iyun. בשלום לסוס התודס וללידה בשינת עליה מילתא אם לא יושן אין צורך לבורך, אבל לפי מה שנהגו. And he means the meaning that is brought in סעיף י' א'. לפי מה שנהגו שלא לברך כשיש שם ביום, אם כן, דמה שמבורך בבוקר היינו משום שקובי חכמים ברוך זו בכל יום. דומיה דשאר ברכס השחר. תדע, לרבנו תם כשעומד קודם על עושה שחר אין צורך לבורך, וכשמאל היום צורך לבורך, אם כן לדידן, אף שלא יושן כשמאל היום צורך לבורך, שלא היה דעתנו לפתור רק ליום אחד כתכונס חז"ל. So the Magen Avraham struggles with this question. And he actually says in the morning, you need to ask someone else to be moitzi you with Birchas HaTorah, כדי לצייס מידי כל הספק. So I say with a little touch of humor, it is an eitzah which we don't really like. It doesn't seem to be right. So every day in the morning we say Birchas HaTorah. And usually we don't say Birchas HaTorah with tremendous kavanah. For a very simple reason. You get up in the morning and it takes you time to really get into it. And you're still groggy and sleepy, and you're afraid of the Shittas HaGra. The Gra says, "Hamaharer b'divrei Torah tzorech levorach." How much time could a person be up in the morning before he starts learning, before he starts being maharer b'divrei Torah? So you're afraid. So you want to say Birchas HaTorah as soon as possible. You don't want to be over Shittas HaGra. You're still half asleep and you say Birchas HaTorah. It is one day in the year where we really feel up to it. We learned all night. Comes morning. You're full of passion. What a wonderful night. Once a year that we learned all night. You want to say Birchas HaTorah in the morning. And then you need to look for someone that slept all night and he's going to be moitzi you Birchas HaTorah. Doesn't feel right. So we're looking for, and is there any other solution? Is there any other eitzah? Comes along Rebbe Akiva Eiger with a spark of genius. And Rebbe Akiva Eiger says, if you want to be up all night, probably you're going to take a nap on Erev Shavuos, because otherwise it's going to be difficult to be up all night. So if you slept Erev Shavuos and you did not say Birchas HaTorah, the other morning you could say Birchas HaTorah mimma nafshach, according to both opinions. Because according to the Rosh, that it depends on hefsek, you should have said Birchas HaTorah yesterday afternoon. But we don't. So comes the other day in the morning, mimma nafshach. If the halacha is karash, I have a debt to pay. I was supposed to say Birchas HaTorah yesterday afternoon. If the halacha is karabeinu tam, that it depends on the day and not on hefsek, okay, new day, we say Birchas HaTorah, so mimma nafshach you could say Birchas HaTorah. And that is Rebbe Akiva Eiger's idea. And therefore, even if you never take a nap in the afternoon, it's kedai to do so Erev Shavuos, because then you could say Birchas HaTorah in the morning. And in most shuls today, You won't find anyone that slept by night and he comes in the morning. Even if he did sleep by night, he would be embarrassed to tell you that he slept by night. So the Eitzah of the Magen Avraham is not a very practical Eitzah, besides the fact that it is not a very appealing Eitzah. So Rabbi Akiva Eiger says, I have a better idea. If you slept Erev Shavuos, then according to both opinions, you could say a bracha in the morning. However, we all know, if a person forgot to say Birchas HaTorah in the morning, and he remembers after the Shemoneh Esrei, Kvar Niftar Ba'ahavo Rabbo. So by the Eved, you could be Yoitze Birchas HaTorah with Birchas Kriyas Shema. Because the second bracha, Lifnei Kriyas Shema, is about Torah. It is about Matan Torah. It is about Bechiras Amoy Yisrael. And therefore, you Yoitze Birchas HaTorah. So, we need to sleep in the afternoon, and the minhag is not to say Birchas HaTorah, even though according to the Rosh, it's a hefsek, you need to say Birchas HaTorah, but the minhag is not to. Like Christmas Shavuos, you can have in mind to be Yoitze Birchas HaTorah. If you do so, then you no longer have the Eitzah of Rabbi Akiva Eiger. So people constantly ask me, no, that's not an Eitzah, because I said Kriyas Shema Shavuos. So the only day in the year you're machavan to be Yoitze Birchas HaTorah B'Kriyas Shema Shavuos would be Shavuos by night. You out of your mind? Yeah? You don't have that in mind every night. So Erev Shavuos, you're going to be Yoitze Birchas HaTorah B'Kriyas Shema Shavuos. So don't. And therefore, according to Rabbi Akiva Eiger, that's really a Eitzah Toiva. And you say Birchas HaTorah in the morning. I think, according to Sif Yud Aleph, that the minhag is Keshitas Rabbeinu Tam. Birchas HaTorah depends on every day in the morning. You could say Birchas HaTorah in the morning, even though there's no one else to be Moitzi you, and even if you didn't sleep out of Shavuos, because the minhag is Keshitas Rabbeinu Tam. And the diak of Sif Yud Aleph is more overpowering than the one in Sif Yud Beis. Because in Sif Yud Beis, Shulchan Aruch deals primarily not with the question if you were up all night. He doesn't deal with that question directly. Sif Yud Beis talks about, do you need to say Birchas HaTorah Balayla? And the chiddush of Sif Yud Beis is Halayla Hoylach Achar Hayom. And therefore, you're up all night, you don't say Birchas HaTorah Kol Zman Shel HaYoshan. So Sif Yud Beis, regarding what we could learn from Sif Yud Beis, but the Shulchan Aruch doesn't deal with that, goes back to the Ikar Adin of Sif Yud Aleph, but according to the minhag in Sif Yud Aleph, the same minhag will apply in Sif Yud Beis. And that is why I paskin. People that are up all night, and they daven v'sikin. Many people are up till Alois Shachar, then they go to sleep, and then they daven in the morning, 8:30, 9 o'clock. If that is your minhag, you have no problem. You're going to say Birchas HaTorah when you get up Shavuos in the morning, and you slept. But those that daven v'sikin, they have the question of Birchas HaTorah. And I say, if you slept Erev Shavuos, that's the Akiva Eiger. Even if you didn't sleep Erev Shavuos, you could say Birchas HaTorah in the morning, based on the minhag Keshitas Rabbeinu Tam. We don't say after sleeping by day, therefore we should say in the morning, even though there was no hefsek. Shalos HaTshuvos Heishiv Moshe. So let me give you a short introduction. Does anybody know who was the Heishiv Moshe? I would not expect you to know. It's a gewaldige Sefer Shalos HaTshuvos. And the mechaber of the Sefer is the Yismach Moshe. And that is a better known Sefer. So does anybody know who was the Yismach Moshe? Who was the Yismach Moshe? You know, many names have many mechaberim. I'm only aware of one Sefer called Yismach Moshe. Anybody know? Yeah. What did you say before saying Rav Moshe Teitelbaum? I don't hear. Oh, Satmar. Yeah. That was way before Satmar, but he is the founder of the Teitelbaum dynasty in Hasidus. He was the Rav in Uhel, which is a city in Hungary. His grandson was the Sigeta Rav, and his sefer is the Yeit of Lev and Avnei Tzedek, and the Sigeta Rav is the grandfather of the Satmar Rebbe. So all the Teitelbaums come from the Yismach Moshe, and the Kloisenberg Rebbe, many of the Halbishtams are also Eineklach of the Yismach Moshe, because the Yeit of Lev was a Machitn with the Divrei Chaim, and the Golas Rav was the son-in-law of the Yeit of Lev. And so the Kloisenberg was also an Einekel of the Yismach Moshe. And the Yismach Moshe didn't grow up as a chassid. He actually grew up in a family of Misnagdim, and then when he was exposed to the Chayzim Meroblim, he became an ardent chassid. Who turned him into a chassid? His son-in-law, because he took a son-in-law chassid, who was a Ilui, and he wrote a sefer Aryeh Debei Iloi, and the son-in-law influenced his father-in-law to become a chassid. Heisha Moshe Simon Beis. Let's just learn the beginning of this tshuva. Nereli lahavi raya brura, psuka, v'chaluta. Oh, he seems to have a lot of self-confidence. Nereli lahavi raya brura, psuka, v'chaluta, which means it is, you can't even question this raya. It's beyond doubt, irrefutable. The lav behefsek the shin alachid talya milta. So he goes against Derash, proving Rabbeinu Tam is right. Whenever an Achron would try to stick his head between two Rishonim and say, Nereli lehevi raya, brura psuka v'chaluta, I would have this urge, let's check whether this is really a raya, brura psuka v'chaluta. If you have such a powerful raya, why didn't the Rosh think about it? What would the Rosh say if he would have a chance to debate your raya? So what's the raya? Magnificent. Lav behefsek de shina lechet melsa. Da poiskim de koise de shina have hefsek kulam bepe echod rak shinas kva. Velo shinas aray. And that the Shechanoch says that beferish. Shinas kva al mitose have hefsek. Shinas aray, according to everyone, is not a hefsek. V'yim kain, Birchas HaTorah alfinam bebrochas chof alaf midachziv kishemesh shemekro hove goyd lelokeinu mefrash Rashi kishebo Moshe leftoich bedivri shiro omerem liyisrael ani yavorech va'atem anu acharei amen v'haine kishemesh shemekro hove goyd lelokeinu v'amen midachazina shebirch Moshe shemam leTorah tuam brocha lefaneo umekan kaz v'poisim de Birchas HaTorah dioraisa, and that's the posuk Yishem Hashem Ekra. Isa bebrochas gimel omed beis. David HaMelech bepalged alayla avakoa me'urta, and the Gemara says, David HaMelech never slept shinas kva. So the Yismach Moshe argues, Moshe Rabbeinu was the greatest individual ever to live. Loi kam kamoisai. So whatever Midas Chasidus we find by any other giant, we would say goes without doubt that Moshe Rabbeinu was the same. If David HaMelech never slept the Shinas Kva, Moshe Rabbeinu never slept the Shinas Kva. And if you're up all night and there's no hefsek, you don't say Birchas HaTorah, how does Moshe Rabbeinu say Birchas HaTorah ba'arves Moav? That was way after Kabbalas HaTorah. And when he started learning, it said Birchas HaTorah. And he's never slept Shinas Kva, only Shinas Aray. So for 50 years, he wasn't chayev in Birchas HaTorah. So how does Moshe Rabbeinu say Birchas HaTorah? Ki Shem Hashem Ekro havu goydel Elokeinu. If David HaMelech didn't sleep Shinas Kva, go without saying, neither did Moshe Rabbeinu. And if it depends on Shina and Hefsek, Moshe Rabbeinu was never chayiv Birchas HaTorah. So how come by Arvis Mayav, Ki Shemesh Ekro, Hovegoy Lelokeinu, suddenly he gets up in the morning and he says, Birchas HaTorah, you're potter. And that would prove Rabbeinu Tam is right. Every day in the morning has nothing to do with Hefsek. So do you think this is Eraya Brura, Psuka, V'chaluta? Does anybody have an idea how could we have Rachmanis and the Rosh and save him from oblivion? From this powerful Raya? I have about 5 ways to disagree with this Raya. First of all, Rabbeinu Tam says, Birchas HaTorah is like Birchas HaShachar every day in the morning. Birchas HaShachar is not Min HaTorah. Birchas HaShachar all the Rabbanon. So, if Rabbeinu Tam says, Birchas HaTorah is like Birchas HaShachar, well, maybe he means, like Birchas HaShachar, the Rabbanon, which is every day, Birchas HaTorah, Min HaTorah is every day in the morning. But that doesn't seem likely. It doesn't seem to be the opinion of Rabbeinu Tam. I think Rabbeinu Tam says, K'moishe tiknu chachomim Birchas HaShachar every morning, the same tekuna would apply to Birchas HaTorah. So what was Birchas HaTorah before they were metaken Birchas HaShachar? I think originally everybody would agree that Birchas HaTorah has to do with Hefsek. When you go to learn, you need to say Birchas HaTorah. Rabbeinu Tam says, Kishabo chachomim letaken all the dinam of Meya Broches, they said Birchas HaTorah would be like Birchas HaShachar. But Birchas HaShachar, not Min HaTorah, mehechet teisa, that there's a concept of bracha that we say every day in the morning. Well, Kriya Shema is said every day in the morning, but Kriya Shema is different. What does it have to do with brachas? Now, there is a din, Afar Pishiyot Semoitzi Achelem, a din Arvis. Maybe Moshe Rabbeinu was potter, but Moshe Rabbeinu, like Rashi says, Moshe Rabbeinu says, I'm going to say Birchas HaTorah, and you should all answer Amen. So Moshe Rabbeinu didn't say Birchas HaTorah for himself. He said Birchas HaTorah to be Moitzi, the entire of Klal Yisrael. So maybe Moshe Rabbeinu for himself was really potter. But the reason he said Birchas HaTorah, he tells the entire Klal Yisrael, listen to me, and I'm going to say Birchas HaTorah, and you're going to answer Amen, and you're going to be Yaitzer. So the Birchas HaTorah he said was, Tibi Moitzi Achelim Yidei Chavosam. Question number 3. In the Hagdama of the children of the Goen, the introduction to Bir Agro Shulchan Aruch Orachaim, and that is one of the 3 important documents in which we learn a little bit about the godless of the Goen, of the Gra, of the Vilna Gaon. And his children write to Seder Hayom. He slept 4 hours every night, and not more than Shittin Nishman, Shinas Arai, and every few minutes he got up. And even when he was sleeping, Rechusha, Merachshan, Sfosav, Halachas, V'Agodas. And I wonder, did the Gaon say Birchas HaTorah every morning? Did he or didn't he? According to their description, he was potter from Birchas HaTorah in the morning because his Shina Balayla was Shina Sarai. And I wonder whether the Shina would be a hefsek if Rechusha, Merachshan, Sfosav, Halachas, V'Agodas. If a person learns while he's dreaming, would that be a hefsek? One could say he's not chayav in Birchas HaTorah when he's sleeping, but l'chayre Birchas HaTorah has nothing to do with the chiyuv. He's learning. So if a person learns all night, and he wasn't only dreaming, Rechusha, Merachshan, Sfosav, Halachas, V'Agodas, would that be a hefsek? And if the Gaon didn't say Birchas HaTorah every day in the morning, wow, that would be in Masarav. Are you familiar with the Sefer Masarav? It is all the minhagim of the Gaon. That would be a real chiddush, that the Gaon did not say Birchas HaTorah in the morning. When did he say Birchas HaTorah? if that was his Seder every night. So, to me, it would seem that the concept of Shina is relative. And if that is the way a person sleeps, then to him, that would be the hefsek. Because otherwise, if the Goen wouldn't have said Birchas HaTorah in the morning, that would be the most commonly quoted minig of the Goen in Masarav. And it's not there. So obviously, like every good Jew, he said Birchas HaTorah every day in the morning. So maybe that was Shittas Rabbeinu Tam. But the Biagro and Shulchan Aruch is noite l'Shittas Arosh. So that would be a problem with the Goen. So obviously, if that is the way a person sleeps, to him, that would be the hefsek, and he would be chayiv in Birchas HaTorah. Number 4, Shulchan Aruch says, and it's the Makoros HaZohar, the minig is not to sleep on Rosh Hashanah. Man de domech beresh shata, domech mazlei. And you probably are aware, the minig is not to sleep Rosh Hashanah, because if you sleep Rosh Hashanah, your mazel is going to go to sleep. So I heard a story about a person that was running home by the Hafsakah Rosh Hashanah, and he was like, where are you going? And he says, I need to take a nap, but it's Rosh Hashanah today. Your mazel is going to go to sleep. And he said, the mazel that I have, I wish he goes to sleep. So he says, I have a very bad mazel, and I want to put him to bed. So the minig is, you don't sleep on Rosh Hashanah. But Reb Chaim Vital writes that the Riyah Kodesh took a nap Rosh Hashanah. How is that? And Reb Chaim Vital writes, these great tzaddikim, these great Balei Kabbalah, Soidas HaTorah mezgalem lehem b'chaloim. And the Riyah Kodesh, in one night, was Mechadish Mashet Talmid Vosek Einoi Mechadish B'mei Hashanah. And that is why the Riyah Kodesh did sleep on Rosh Hashanah. And I say, David HaMelech didn't sleep a Shinas Kva, but maybe Moshe Rabbeinu did, because he was Moshe Rabbeinu. So many sources in Shas, Rav Sheshes says, Kadnayim v'shochav Rav Omer laho milta. Rav Sheshes was a Talmud of Rav, and sometimes there's a member of Rav, who was the first generation, the greatest Amiram in Bavel, the greatest Amora in Bavel. And the Gemara asks Akash and Rav, and Rav Sheshes says, Kadnayim v'shochav Rav Omer laho milta. And that is somewhat derogatory. It seems to be a zilzal. Oh, you said it while you were sleeping? Well, what does he mean to say? Reb Meir Auerbach was one of the Gedolim in Yerushalayim. He was one of the Gedolim of Poland, and in his later years he came to Yerushalayim. Imre Bino, Reb Meir Auerbach. And he quotes Reb Chaim Vital, and it's an interesting approach. He says, Al pi halacha we have a problem, but maybe this mamar is al pi Kabbalah, Kadnayim v'shochav Rav Omer laho milsa, because Soidas HaKabbalah are mizgala b'chaloim. So maybe we don't understand what Rav says. It doesn't seem to fit al pi halacha, but al pi Kabbalah, this is right. And that is what they meant when they said Kadnayim v'shochav. So maybe Moshe Rabbeinu, because he was Moshe Rabbeinu, could afford to sleep in Shinas Kva. And question number 5, the Mishnah Brura quotes it. Only in the middle of the week there is a kpeda not to sleep in Shinas Kva. But Shabbos, there is part of Onik Shabbos. And even the greatest Gedolim, Shabbos, you sleep in Shinas Kva. So maybe Kishemesh Shemekra was Sunday morning. So B'mchila Mekvoi Tirosoi of the Heish of Moshe, spark of genius, discussion, but it is neither a raya brura, nor a raya psuka, nor a raya chaluta. And this remains a machlokes between Rosh and Rabbeinu Tam, 2 different approaches. So we dealt with the question, you're up all night, do you say Birchas HaTorah in the morning? And my psak is, yes. If you slept Erev Shavuos, that is preferable. But even if you didn't, you could say Birchas HaTorah in the morning. So what do we do on Shavuos? Two minhagim, because Shavuos doesn't have any mitzvahs. Unlike Chag HaSukkos, which has sukkah and lulav, unlike Chag HaMatzos, which has many, many mitzvahs, Shavuos has no specific mitzvah besides Simchas Yom Tov. So Shavuos is all about minhagim. Two fundamental minhagim. One is you're up all night, Shavuos by night. The other minhag is blinches. Two minhagim of Shavuos. Cheesecake and being up all night. We can appreciate why we're up all night Shavuos. It's Yom Kabbalas HaTorah. Where does cheesecake come into the picture? Psochem Samaches. There's a machlokes Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. The two Barei Plukta, greatest Tanoim. How do we reconcile a stira between two psukim? Atzeres ti Elochem and Atzeres LaHashem. Rabbi Eliezer says you could choose Yoshev V'Shoina or Yoshev V'Oichel V'Shoisa. One of the two. Simchas Yom Tov has two different formulas, and everyone could choose. Either I'm going to dedicate the entire Yom Tov to Talmud Torah and Tefillah, or Achille V'Shtia. Rabbi Yeshua says no. Chetzio Lochem and Chetzio Lashem. It is a combination of both. Yom Tov should be a day of spiritual growth, Torah and Tefillah, but also Achille V'Shtia, Simchas HaGuf and Simchas HaNefesh. And then the Belosa says, Hakal Moedim Batzeres, the Be'inam Beinam Elochem. Even a Eliezer that says you could decide to dedicate the entire day learning and davening, Atzeres Shavuos is different. Shavuos need to be Lochem, Oichel V'Shoisa. Why? Yom Shabbos Nitne Torah. And that is counterintuitive. If anybody were to ask us, which of the three, Shalosh Regalim, you're entitled to learn all day, I think any one of us would say Shavuos. Why? For the very same reason the Gemara gives to the opposite. Because Yom Shenitna by Torah. But the Gemara says no. But Tzeres, you need Simchas HaGuf. Why? Yom Shenitna Torah. Does that make sense? Kosev Rashi. Laharois shenoyach v'mekubel olav yom zeh shebo nitno Torah liyisrael. You need to show that you love this day. It's such a happy day, and therefore, be happy, and be happy in every form. Achila v'shtia. Why is that? Kachi da'arka shel Torah. Pas b'melech toichel, mayim b'mesura tishta, ala oretz tishan, v'chayetzar tichya. That is darka shel Torah. It seems to be somewhat unpleasant, frightening. Is that what we choose? Is that the way we choose to live? Pas b'melech toichel, mayim b'mesura tishta, ala oretz tishan. But don't take a breath. Keep on. What does the Brisa say? Im ato oisekein, ashrecha b'yolam hazeh v'toiv l'chol yolam habo. Not only yolam habo, yolam hazeh as well. Rashi. And Rashi is the great Pashtin. Rosh HaMedabrim. All the Balatoises were his Talmidim v'Talmida Talmidav. Rashi says, it is not that what we strive to. We don't want that life. Pas b'melech toichel v'mayim b'mesura tishta. Is not what we want for ourselves. The kavanah is, even in the most dire circumstances, even in a time which chas v'sholem, all you will have is pas b'melech and mayim b'mesura, v'aloretz tishon, af al piken, learn Torah, and you will have a happy life. Imata oisiken. But it is not what we should be doing. And we hope HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give us shefa and bracha, and we will have a comfortable life. The command of the Mishnah is, even if chas v'sholem you won't, And even if Chas v'Sholom all you will have would be pas b'melech, v'mayim b'mesura, v'anoretz tishon, af al pi ken, you still could have an unbelievably rewarding and happy life. U'b'Torah ta'omer. And if you do so, ashrecha b'yolam hazeh, v'toiv lecha la'olam habo. Many years ago, I met a person, and he told me he learned in Lakewood, and it was the first kfutzu where Rabban Kotel was miyaseh the yeshiva. And he knew his Talmidim. Today, no Rosh Yeshiva knows his Talmidim. The yeshivas are so big today, you can't remember your Talmidim. But the bigger problem is, most of them don't even care to know their Talmidim. But Chazal teach us, V'shinantam levonecho, elu ha-Talmidim. Talmidim should be like your children. Everybody knows his children. You should know your Talmidim. So this guy learned in Lakewood, and then he got married, he went into business, he was very successful, and he meets Rabban Kotler at a wedding many years later. And Rabban asks him, where are you? I haven't seen you for ages. You never come to a shir, you don't come to yeshiva. And he says, Rabban, the yeshiva remembers me. I wasn't the biggest masbid in the yeshiva, and I wasn't the top of the class. And Baruch Hashem, I'm successful in business, and I have a Yesachah Zavul, an agreement with 5 Yungalite. Isn't that the greater thing for me to do? And Rabban tells him, he responds, I'm a kana your olam haba. Well, what type of an olam hazard do you have? He asks him, if you never come to a shir, you never learn, you don't enjoy your learning. So I'm concerned about your olam hazard, not about your olam haba. Your haba would be great. You have 5 Yesachah Zavulans. So we want to instill in the hearts of our children Torah. Learning Torah is like cheesecake. And if you dedicate your life to Torah, it's not only about Olam Haba, it's about Olam Hazeh. Every Wednesday night, I give a shir in Bnei Brak. And this week, a young boy runs in a modern school, asked whether he could come along in my car when I go to Bnei Brak. He wants to talk to me. And he said, please, I'll be happy. And this boy was so devastated and in turmoil. And it's so difficult for him, Yiddishkeit. And he asked, why? Why do we need to do all this? Why is the Torah so hard? I can't eat this, and I can't eat that, and I can't look here, and I can't look there. And I had so much rachmanis on this young boy, and I need to encourage him and say, well, in the beginning it might be hard, but this is the life that will bring you the greatest happiness and the greatest fulfillment, and persevere, keep on track. And I promise you, you will reach a stage in which you will really appreciate what it is to live as a frum Jew. So last week I was in America, and I met many people. And one of the people I met was approximately my age, and he was said to have a lot of money. People told me he's a billionaire. Our meeting wasn't about money. I didn't ask him for money, but I got to see him, and he asked me, how many children do you have? And I said I had 7 children. And he says, how many grandchildren do you have? I don't want to say the number, Mishum Ein Abisha, but a lot. And then he gives a sigh, and he says, I have 4 children, and none of them is married yet. My oldest son just got engaged to a Moroccan girl, and he doesn't seem to be very happy about it. And my daughters are not up to getting married. And he says, my dream is to have an Einekel. My dream is to have a grandson. And I had so much rachmanis on this person. It really broke my heart. He's a billionaire, but he has no happiness in life. Well, what is his life about? None of his children are married yet. And that's the modern world. It's not something which is very uncommon. So if you live a Torah life, Ashrecha b'yolam hazeh, v'toiv lecha la'olam haba. So a person recently told me, I don't feel comfortable even saying this over, but it's such a powerful statement. And he said, if la'acha mea ve'eslem, I will discover that everything I believed in is chas v'sholem sheker, I would live this same life over again and I would do nothing differently. Because I had a wonderful life. Big family, loving family. My elderly years, my kids cared for me. I enjoyed every Shabbos in my life. It was wonderful. I enjoyed davening. It gave me so much growth and so much feeling. Well, chas v'sholem, la'achamei v'esem, that is when we really see the light. And that is when we will really see what is emes and chesomah shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu emes. But it's a very powerful statement. And that is why, yes, Shavuos has to do with cheesecake. Laharois shenoyach v'mekubel olav yom zeh shebo nitne Torah liYisrael. We want to instill in the hearts of our children, if this is the path you choose, this is happiness, this is simcha saguf v'hanefesh, and that is what Shavuos is about. Im ato oise ken, ashrecha b'yolam hazeh, v'toiv l'cho la'olam haba. So there are two different minhagim regarding the vash v'cholav tachas l'shoincho. When do we eat the melech yesuda? Our minhag is Shabbos Shavuos in the morning. We have a kiddush, and that's when we eat the cheesecake and the blinches and the burekas. Minhag Ashkenaz and many kehelas many years ago was the Shavuos night suda. Is the melech one. I like the second minhag, or the first minhag I quoted. Yes, blinches and cheesecake are part of Shavuos, but that's not the way to start your Kabbalas HaTorah. No. After you're up all night, and you didn't even say one davar bottle, you didn't speak Dvarim B'Teilim, either you said Tekhan Leil Shavuos, or you learned Be'iyan all night. In the morning, Bedin Hu Sheyitel Schorai. So in the morning, you can have your blinches and your cheesecake. But that comes after Leil Shavuos, not before. It's not the way to start Shavuos. Blinches is not the way to be makabel Yom Tov of Yom Kabbalas HaTorah. You were up all night, you learned, you said Birchas HaTorah with fervor in the morning, then you could have your cheesecake. Laharois shenoyach v'mekubel olav, yom zeh shebo nitno Torah liYisrael. Have a beautiful Yom Tov, and each and every one of us should be makabel all Torah and oil malchus shemayim ba'ahava. Good Shabbos.